When China began burying straw and planting trees in the middle of barren deserts, the world responded with laughter. Journalists and scientists around the globe were baffled. How can you grow anything where it barely rains? Why spend billions on what many believed was doomed to fail? China's deserts, like the Taklamakan and Gobi, were considered unconquerable. Cities choked on sandstorms. Villages and roads were swallowed by sand. Crops died under the pressure of wind and dust. Then, the government launched a massive campaign, China's Green Wall. Its goal, to halt the advance of the desert. It sounded like a fairy tale, but China didn't back down. From the very start, the project faced brutal reality. Planted trees died en masse. Nature refused to obey. Scientists raised alarms. Monocultures, especially fast-growing trees like poplars and eucalyptus, were poorly suited. They dried out the soil, sucked up the last drops of water, and died after a few years, leaving behind dead wood and disappointment. Local ecologists warned that overly dense greening could make things worse, disrupting the balance and depriving agriculture of water. Criticism grew, even inside the government. Academic articles attacked the strategy. A major 2011 report from the Chinese Academy of Sciences openly urged a new approach, not planting trees at all costs, but restoring ecosystems using natural processes. Instead of abandoning the project, China did something unexpected. It admitted its mistakes and rethought the strategy. Scientists and officials realized that mass planting without ecological consideration doesn't work. They switched to a scientific method: local adaptation, experiments, native plants, and modern technology. The Great Green Wall entered a new phase, one of engineering and ecological wisdom. Mistakes became the foundation for innovation. Mockery turned into motivation. Thus began the great transformation of the desert. But no one could have predicted the scale of what came next. What looked like failure was about to become a miracle. By 2015, the greening project gained new life. China began using a method that seemed absurd at the time: burying straw and dead plant material in the sand. Hundreds of thousands of tons of straw, once burned after harvest, were now carefully laid in the desert. Media laughed again. China's feeding the desert with straw. But behind the odd method was a brilliant idea. Straw kept the sand from moving in the wind. It trapped moisture, preserved microorganisms, and brought the soil back to life. It was like magic. In places once ravaged by sandstorms, grasses began to sprout within months, then shrubs, and eventually trees. International experts took notice. The UN sent a special commission. Its findings stunned even the harshest skeptics. In parts of the Gobi, sandstorms dropped by 80%. Places once uninhabitable without masks now saw goats grazing. The topsoil stopped blowing away. Villages no longer disappeared. Children returned to schools without fearing dust storms. The biggest breakthrough came near the city of Korla, on the edge of the Taklamakan. Inspired by the green zones, local farmers took a risk and started farming nearby. No one believed anything would grow, but within 2 seasons, a farmer named Li Chen shocked the entire province. His watermelons were twice the normal size. His cotton yield broke all records. Ecologists were skeptical. They sent soil samples for testing. The results were astounding. Where there had been no life, entire colonies of beneficial bacteria and fungi had appeared. Biologists called it the ecological rebirth of the desert. Li Chen, an ordinary farmer, became a national hero and received a government grant. Chinese engineers didn't stop. They brought in drones and satellites to pinpoint areas most likely to support greenery, tracking every patch of desert in real time. A green window race began, finding spots where plants could grow fastest. What's more, locals took part. Former nomads, for the first time, were granted land management rights. But just as everything seemed to go perfectly, trouble returned. Reports emerged of mass tree die-offs. Was the desert coming back? The world held its breath. Was China about to fail again? The cause of the die-off was a mystery. Satellites showed plummeting soil moisture, as if something was draining the water from below. Some blamed climate change. Others pointed to poor irrigation systems. Then came a shocking discovery. Beijing scientists found that beneath part of the desert, a massive underground salt lens was reactivating. A giant ancient salt deposit was melting and poisoning the tree roots. This crisis struck at China's ambitions. Global media began speaking again of collapse. Some Western experts suggested shutting the project down entirely. But then, a new hero appeared. A young ecologist named Tang Mei, previously unknown to the public, proposed a radical idea. Use bioremediation fungi, special strains capable of breaking down salt and restoring the soil. Most thought it was science fiction, but the government gave her a chance. Within 3 months, test plots treated with her fungi began to recover. Tree mortality stopped. Soil salinity dropped by 40%. Tang Mei became a national icon. Journalists dubbed her China's green heroine. Western universities tried to hire her. She refused. My mission is here, in the desert. Meanwhile, something strange started happening in global business circles. The same corporations that once laughed at China now began buying land near the restored areas. Some launched their own solar farm projects in the new green zones. Investors realized China wasn't just building a green belt, it was creating the energy heart of Asia. Then, a satellite image leaked online. A massive green streak stretched like a hand across the Gobi Desert, from Mongolia to China's inner provinces. Social media exploded. People called it China's new Great Wall, not a wall of stone, but a living, green corridor capable of stopping desertification across Eurasia. But not everyone welcomed the transformation. Some neighboring countries, already facing water shortages, voiced concern. Rumors spread. China was tapping into underground aquifers, worsening water conditions abroad. One influential politician even called it a green occupation. Diplomatic disputes began, along with threats of economic sanctions. Everything depended on how China would respond to the accusation. And that's when something unexpected happened. China invited independent observers and granted full access to satellite data and laboratory reports. It turned out that instead of draining water sources, the country had built a system of underground reservoirs collecting rainwater and condensation, without touching natural springs. Suspicions faded, and when journalists discovered that the system had been developed in collaboration with scientists from Europe and Africa, even the harshest critics admitted China had done what many dreamed of, but were afraid to begin. But while the world applauded, deep in the heart of the desert, a patrol drone detected strange heat surges underground. What they would soon discover would overturn everything humanity thought it knew about the Gobi Desert. At first, the anomaly on satellite images looked like a simple thermal glitch, nothing unusual. But a week later, sensors picked up the same spikes again. Scientists sent in a ground team. Even the most experienced engineers weren't prepared for what they found. Just over 20 meters below the sand, they encountered an ancient tunnel system, clearly man-made. The tunnels were carved into rock with incredible precision. Some walls were covered in symbols and carvings no historian had ever seen. Beneath the Gobi Desert, it seemed, lay a lost city, perhaps the remains of a civilization that predated even the Great Wall of China. But even more astonishing was what they found inside. The tunnels maintained a stable temperature, and the humidity was so high that moss grew on the walls. researchers began to seriously consider the existence of a self-sustaining underground ecosystem, hidden for millennia. Then China made a move that shocked the world. They opened the site to international scientists, inviting archaeologists, historians, and biologists from around the globe. The scientific community held its breath. Myths and legends suddenly had physical proof. Journalists dubbed it the New Atlantis. Once accused of wasteful extravagance, China was now the guardian of one of the greatest discoveries of the century. But the surprises didn't end there. During the excavation, one researcher got lost in the tunnels. He was missing for nearly 24 hours before reappearing, shaken and silent. He was found near a cave, whose walls were covered in images of modern trees and even solar panels. No one could explain how a civilization thousands of years old could depict future technology. Some said it was a coincidence. Others, that it might be evidence of contact with an unknown intelligence. China quickly tightened security around the site and restricted information flow. Meanwhile, the effects of the Green Wall project began to reach far beyond China. Dust levels over Mongolia and northern China dropped by 70%. Rainfall increased in central regions. Mountains began retaining moisture, creating conditions for a new climate. Those who once called the project madness were now begging for cooperation. For the first time in decades, China gained a powerful but peaceful form of influence, climate-based soft power. Yet behind the scenes of international praise, unease was growing. A satellite recorded strange tremors in the ground near the underground complex. Geophysicists suggested that creating an artificial green zone and disturbing subterranean moisture might have triggered ancient tectonic fault lines. In the center of the Green Wall, the ground began to rise. Some trees suddenly died without cause. As the world focused on the archaeological sensation, a massive sinkhole opened along the northern edge of the green belt. It was so deep that even military drones couldn't detect the bottom. Chinese authorities immediately declared the area restricted. People started whispering, "What is the desert isn't just a desert, but a lid over something far older and far more dangerous." After the giant sinkhole appeared, still impossible to measure with even the most advanced tech, the government sealed off the zone completely. Communication was cut. All scientists and workers were evacuated. Unknown drones appeared in the skies above. Official media said nothing, but one engineer who escaped from the guarded area leaked a video that instantly went viral. In the footage, the ground appeared to breathe, the surface slowly rising and falling, as if something alive lay beneath. Around the sinkhole, trees withered in hours. The sand darkened and began to emit acrid vapors. The engineer claimed that under the desert was something far more than a buried city, a massive structure stretching kilometers downward. Like a giant black shell carved with strange, glowing symbols. Scientists tried to connect the discovery to ancient Chinese legends. One forgotten manuscript spoke of a serpent god beneath the sands, sealed underground for humanity's sins. It was considered myth, until now. Meanwhile, the Green Wall began to destabilize. Tree branches twisted into shapes resembling the symbols found in the tunnels. Leaves changed color, as if signaling something. Authorities tried to contain the panic, but it was clear. The changes weren't just environmental. They were energetic. Then, the unthinkable happened. Within one night, similar phenomena began appearing across desert regions. From the Sahara to the Taklamakan, soil became loose. Deep, rumbling sounds echoed from beneath. And on the other side of the world, symbols matching those in Gobi began to appear. Scientists reached a terrifying conclusion. The system activated in the Gobi Desert was part of a global network. Ancient, possibly extraterrestrial. And it was waking up. China urgently proposed creating an international alliance to study the phenomenon. The US, despite years of tension, agreed. For the first time in decades, cooperation emerged. Driven by fear, not politics. Because if this system was alive, and if its awakening couldn't be controlled, the consequences might be unimaginable. In the end, however, China emerged victorious. What was once mocked as a wasteful experiment had triggered not only a climate miracle, but possibly the greatest discovery in human history. They didn't just plant trees in the desert. They activated an ancient mechanism, one that could change all of humanity, or destroy it. Now, no one is laughing. Everyone is silent, staring toward the Gobi. This is a story about how persistence and belief in the impossible can change the world. Sometimes, the most unbelievable ideas seem insane until they open a door to the future. China's Gobi Desert experiment is proof of that. And now, what do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments.